This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you do shitty things. Welcome into the practice squad. This is going to be a different episode. For one, we're talking baseball and Tigers specifically. Stroz, I can't, we're 32 episodes deep. Have we done 5 Tigers topics ever?
No. I had to think about it for a second. No. We've talked Miguel Cabrera, I think, for one, and maybe here and there we've sprinkled something in, but I don't think we've done more than 3 or 4 Tiger-related topics. And Tigers are all throughout this. I mean, the opening of the baseball season is right around the corner here.
So you wanted to play a game called the Tigers Will. Very simple game. We both got a couple things that we think the Tigers will do. We're going to wrap up the show with that. Before that, Stroz has an issue with something coming up this weekend he doesn't want to go to. We'll get to that in about 10, 15 minutes. But first, Stroz and I have created something that I don't even think is that cool itself, but the name I love. The Ryan Rayburn scale. And Stroz, you're going to have to remind me why you came up with this as an idea of something you wanted to do. But the Ryan Rayburn scale essentially is, how done are you with this person? From power rankings almost, from top to bottom, people in Detroit sports you're just done with. Remind me, what inspired you to want to do this?
So we were kicking around ideas for show topics, and I wanted to know, which Detroit athlete are you just done with? Do you not want to see anymore?
But did anything bring that about?
I was just driving around, and I was just thinking to myself, because baseball's around the corner, and I'm tired of Jordan Zimmerman. I'm absolutely tired of him. So I'm done with him. And I was just like, okay, we could probably turn this into a fun game, because if you look at the Lions, I'm done with a bunch of the Lions. I can't.
And that's the problem. The reason I was curious, what inspired this is because, I'm thinking through, and it's I was done with Andre Drummond, but he's gone. I was just done with, guy wasn't a modern NBA player. His attitude, I'll say off the court, was frustrating. I'm hesitant to be the guy who challenges how much a guy tries on the court, but his attitude
on the court was frustrating too. he was a complete head case. Joel Embiid just rented space in his brain. It was horrible.
At times I agree with you, but I think it's overblown, the extent to which his attitude on the court was a problem. In fact, I would even go as far as to say it was a negative about him, but it wasn't the Andre Drummond problem. The Andre Drummond problem was that he's just not a modern NBA player. But I was ready for him to be done. He's gone. I can't really say that about anybody else on the Pistons. No, I don't think I have anything else there. The Wings, I haven't paid close enough attention to in recent memory. I brought up the name Jonathan Erickson to you when we were talking about this topic, because I remember him from when I did care about the Red Wings. It just felt like that guy lasted forever and sucked the whole time. And then currently on the Lions, my closest answer was Matt Patricia.
Mm-hmm. He was probably my number one.
I liked the idea of Matt Patricia before he came in. It didn't take long for it to become very clear I didn't like him, and then last year just pushed things further. So I don't really have one on the Pistons. I don't really have one on the Red Wings. I got one on the Lions that comes to mind. And the Tigers, it's hard to be sick of people, because no one, outside, unless you're going to say Miguel Cabrera, I'm really curious. Do you have anybody current on the Tigers?
Not Joel Zmaya, but Jordan Zimmerman's probably my number one guy that I can't stand right now. He just makes way too much money and doesn't provide you with anything. After that, you're right. It gets a little bit sketchy. I mean, Michael Fulmer's a guy where I just need you to figure out which direction you're going. Are you going to be that ace pitcher, or are you done? Is your career over? I know we just had Tommy John, and I know he's coming back, but this was a guy who the Tigers could have traded a couple years ago and got something for him. Instead, they decided to keep him, blows out his elbow, and depending on who you listen to, it sounds like it's part of his delivery. He just has a really violent delivery that puts a lot of strain on that elbow. He might not ever be what he was supposed to be. So in this case, for this topic, I'm kind of done on him, because I don't know what you are, and I'm kind of ready to move on. But the whole reason this was deemed the Ryan...
Hold on, that seems a bit unfair. You make it seem like we've watched Michael Fulmer, struggle through the last 4 or 5 seasons. We're 3 years removed maybe from him being super high expectations?
Yeah. But he hasn't given you anything. He's
generally
given you That's the problem. That's why I'm done on him. Like, I'm over it. Like, I'm ready to move on. You can't stay healthy. And look, best availability is availability, and he's never available. Anyways, getting back to how this topic formed, originally, you were like, I don't really know if I want to do current. You're like, what about Ryan Rayburn? And we deemed it the Ryan Rayburn scale, which I love. I love the Ryan Rayburn scale.
Current guys. You know, there's a lot of guys that come to mind historically, but not a lot that I can say currently. And yeah, Ryan Rayburn was the first one who came to mind because I had a Facebook memory yesterday about Ryan Rayburn. And I think Ryan Rayburn is the ultimate, like, I'm sick of you, please leave my favorite team player in Detroit sports. And there's something in particular about the Tigers who are on the Ryan Rayburn scale, because there are always people in the Tigers fandom who have a soft spot for these guys. Ryan Rayburn being the ultimate one. I thought this guy brought nothing to the team at any point in his career here. He might have had a 5-game stint in his career where he was useful. Other than that, he was a waste of space. Another one who we talked about before recording yesterday, Don Kelly, was loved by many here.
DKB, I'm so over. I don't understand what the fascination with DKB is.
I'll tell you, I was on your side, but I had a funny Facebook memory this morning. Clearly the Tigers were playing an important series this time of year, 7, 8 years ago.
Some of their best baseball.
But Don Kelly was batting .250 at the time. And I said when he's batting .250, it's hard not to like him. And that's true. Don Kelly, like, I appreciated his ability to play, you know, across the field, but a lot of times the guy was garbage. Like, I don't care if you can play every position if you're awful at it. But apparently, at this time, 7 or 8 years ago, he was having a good start to the season. And then the other one, who you told me we're going to disagree on, Brandon freaking Inge.
I love Inge. I have a Brandon Inge jersey.
Why?
I don't know. I just love Brandon Inge. He was an athletic guy. He was a try-hard guy. Like, I thought he was an exceptional athlete. But all that being said, when you play in the major leagues, you play with other exceptional athletes. So what it boils down to is he was really just a try-hard guy. He went out there every day, gave it a really good effort, and I don't think he was special.
What
he was
about
not
being a try-hard guy? Like, baseball's not exactly a try-hard sport.
He was a third baseman who tried to make plays. I don't think he sucked. I thought he had pretty good range. He wasn't great. He wasn't great with a baseball bat. That was his problem. I think the thing with Brandon Inge is I probably related to him just because he sucked at the plate. As a baseball player, I sucked at the plate. And
so Stroz, you weren't sick of him because he reminded you of the terrible baseball player that you are.
He reminded me of me. So selfishly, I love Brandon Inge.
Then I would think you would like everybody on the Ryan Rayburn scale.
No, I hate Don Kelly. I hate Ryan Rayburn.
I don't know, man. Like, Brandon Inge, I'll admit this. At Brandon Inge's peak, he didn't belong on the Ryan Rayburn scale. The problem is Brandon Inge's peak was so short and his time with the Tigers was so long that, by the way, I remember I went to Brandon Inge's first game back in Detroit, like, as a non-Tiger, and nobody was there. I'm pretty sure it was a day game, actually. And I remember, like coming across fans who were, like, excited to be at the Brandon Inge return game. Like, shut the hell up. The Brandon Inge return game.
I just want you to know I am president of the Brandon Inge fan club.
Where's he on your Ryan Rayburn scale?
Where is he at on my Ryan Rayburn scale? He is behind Ryan Rayburn and he's behind Don Kelly. That's for damn sure. He is at almost the other end of the Ryan Rayburn scale. On a scale of 1 to Ryan Rayburn, he is probably a -1.
All right. Who else? Who are some other historical players you got on your list?
So Bobby Higginson. Like, do you remember Bobby Higginson? I don't remember if you're old enough for Bobby Higginson.
So I remember the name Bobby Higginson, but I wasn't, like, aware enough of sports. Like, do you remember a time in your life where you'd, like, watch a Tigers game, but there was no context of the season?
Yeah.
That Bobby Higginson was that age for me. Like, I would watch a game, and if they won, I'd be happy. If they lost, I'd be sad. But, like, I could watch a game and they could win, and then they could be 7-42, and I wouldn't know the difference. It was a win. That was Bobby Higginson for me.
You didn't care. Yeah, so Bobby Higginson for me was, I just remember that contract that they signed him to. He had a really good season, and then they signed him to this massive deal, and it was absolutely abysmal after that. The guy just, he wasn't a very good baseball player, and I couldn't wait for them to get out from underneath that contract. A guy who is currently on a Detroit roster that I am completely over, Jimmy Howard. And it's nothing to do with Jimmy Howard. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a fantastic guy. Jimmy Howard was a guy that, as he was coming up through the minor league system, I heard nothing but glowing things about Jimmy Howard's going to be great. Jimmy Howard's going to be great. You just got to wait for Jay Howie. You just got to wait. He's going to come up. He's going to knock your doors off. Then he got here. And I never thought he was anything special. And then he had a groin injury. And then after that, he's always had a groin injury. There's always a problem with Jimmy Howard. And I don't think Jimmy Howard's like I said, a bad guy. I'm just tired of Jimmy Howard. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's necessarily good. I just think he's a guy, and I'm ready to move on. I'm ready for the next guy. You're going to find out a lot of these guys that are on my list, especially if they're current, I'm just ready to move on from them. It's not even so much that they're bad players. I'm just ready to move on to whoever is going to be next to take their place.
And I think it makes sense, particularly with a guy like Jimmy Howard, because of, like, the ups and downs he went through. So Jimmy Howard was a part of, I believe he was on one of the teams that made it to the conference title game, or conference title series.
Conference finals, yep.
Yeah. I could be off a bit, but I believe he was on one of those teams. So he was like, he never really saw the peak Red Wings years, but he also was a part of kind of coming down from those. And now you're in the rebuild, and I can get like wanting to move on from that guy. Mm-hmm. Somebody you have on your list that you sent me that I think is really interesting is Darko. I don't know if Darko Milicic doesn't crack the Ryan Rayburn scale for me because of my age, but it almost felt like, see, for him to be on this list, it feels like there would need to be a level of expectation. And obviously picked at number 2, there's a level of expectation, but it almost felt like we just accepted it gracefully that he was never going to be any good because of the era, because the Pistons won a championship in 2004, lost in the championship in 2005, played to Miami, who obviously went on to win it all tight in 2006, and by 2007, he was no longer a Piston.
Yeah, I think with Darko, he gets a bit of a pass because the expectation wasn't necessarily there, because when he came in, his rookie year, he was part of that 2004 team. Then 2005, they end up losing the championship in the finals. And then by 2006, 2007, they're head to head with Miami, and they're trying to get back to that level. I think if there was more of an expectation on Darko, he would probably be more hated and be more highly ranked on this Ryan Rayburn scale. But I think because of when he came in and what the expectation was, he's not as hated. I think that's a bit of a flaw with Detroit and the Detroit memory with Darko.
We don't hate somebody enough.
Well, yeah, because if you look at it, right, if you would have had either Dwayne Wade, or if you'd have had Chris Bosh, or if you'd have had, you could even say Carmelo Anthony. I'm not a huge Carmelo Anthony fan, but if you had one of those 3 guys, right, I think it expands your window, and I think you could have won more championships. Instead, you had Darko. He was nicknamed the Human Victory Cigar. He gave you nothing, and basically your window gets shortened because he wasn't a good player. He was a bad draft pick by Joe Dumars.
Yeah, I won't call it a flaw that we don't hate him enough, but I think it's fair to point out that as much as, I mean, we all do go back and do the what if, but we do the what if because of how good the draft class was. If this was a mediocre draft class, I don't think we do the what if so much with Darko. I think because of the context of how good these Pistons were, he does get let off a lot easier than you normally would be busting like he did as a number 2 draft pick.
I mean, you could even had, Chris Kaman, I think, was in that draft.
I think Kendrick Perkins. I mean, that's the thing. Obviously, the top of the top in that draft class was Spetzel, LeBron, Wade, Carmelo, Bosh. But the middle class of that draft class was incredible too. In fact, you probably would have been better off with like the 10th pick because somebody would have taken Darko, and there were so many other good players. Before we moved on, I mean, this is something we obviously do all the time. But let me go back real quickly because I think people do forget how good the middle class of that draft was. Carmelo, Bosh, Wade, LeBron, obviously. You said Chris Kaman. But like Kirk Heinrich would have been a better player. Okay, I lied. Pick 10 would have been bad. They go through a pretty rough stretch in the middle. But then at 18, you got David West, Carlos Delfino, who obviously was a Piston pick, pretty good career. Kendrick Perkins was in this draft. Josh Howard was in this draft. Mo Williams had a decent NBA career. Kyle Korver. This draft class, even, I hated the guy as a Piston. You know what? This is a guy I was ready for to go the moment they signed him. Steve Blake. As much as I hated him, still a pretty decent NBA career. Luke Walton was in this draft.
That was a crazy draft class. It was absolutely nuts.
Maybe it was, okay. I spoke incorrectly. The middle class of this draft was not good. You had the elite players, But then after that, you had a nice crop of like role players, which is, you know what, to be fair, Darko went on to become a role player in his career. It just didn't happen in Detroit.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. I mean, realistically, I'd have to go look at his numbers. I think Darko was okay for maybe a season, and he was not even like your sixth man off the bench. He was closer to like your seventh or your eighth guy, and he was just there to spell minutes and to cause fouls and take fouls.
I'm not saying he was good, but he became a rotational piece for a segment of his career.
A guy a Piston that I'm currently done with. I'm done with Blake. Look, I appreciate Blake coming. I never really wanted him here. I get what the deal was. I get that Tom Gores wanted to put butts in seats and thought that getting a guy from LA, a big star, which at the time Blake was not a big star anymore. Blake was a very good player, often injured, but was not what he used to be. I get why he was brought here. I just feel like the cap issue that it ended up causing and the fact that he can never stay healthy, I'm ready for him to move on. I want to see what the Pistons can do with some freed up cap space. Like, I understand free agents don't want to come to Detroit. I get it. I totally understand it. But I am more confident with what you have going on in your front office with Ed Stefanski and Troy Weaver than I've ever been with this Pistons front office. And I'm interested to see what they could do with some of that freed up cash and that cap space.
The only pushback I'd have is, like, not being a basketball guy anymore. I don't think non-basketball guys recognize how good of a 2018-19 Blake Griffin had. And I get, like, the team sucks, so it doesn't matter. I don't think it's that different than saying, I'm sick of Miguel Cabrera. And people would go, come on, man. Now, the difference is obviously Miguel Cabrera has a history as a Tiger, but Blake Griffin was special in 2018-19. I mean, he was a top 15 player, all-pro level type of player. And you say you can't stay healthy. He didn't play much last year, but he only missed 7 games in 2018. That's pretty meaningless. Anybody can miss 7 games. So I'd push back a little bit on Blake Griffin, but I get why. I do want to move on here in a moment to the issue you have this weekend. There's one more name on your list I want to hit. Is there anyone else you need to hit before we move on?
No, I think we need to hit this name. I've got a story for you with this name. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and say it.
So the last name I wanted to bring up was Eric Ebron. And very unique reason for this. I was not ready to move on. I mean, I didn't mind him being let go, but, well, it ended up sucking. But anyways, I wasn't dying to move on from Eric Ebron when he was a Lion. I'm just dying to move on from him now. I'm so sick of the fact that Eric Ebron, who is 2 full seasons removed from being a Lion, still comes up in Lions conversations. This is the axe who won't go away.
This actually happened earlier this week. So John, who's part of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, he's my cousin. Me and him put the network together like 7 years ago. He ended up putting a post out. He writes for SI and he writes for SI Lions, and he put a post out where it asked the question if it was the right time to move on from Eric Ebron, and he tagged Eric Ebron in it. And Eric decided to comment, and he of course, right. He straps a flamethrower on, and then he just feels like he has to come in and torch the city of Detroit and torch the fans. And of course, Detroit fans aren't going to take that, so they go back at him. And this goes back and forth, and it's been going on now for roughly 5 days.
Wait, it's still going on?
Yes. It's absolutely
I
insane.
saw like day one, but I just like,
it's
that
nuts, man. Eric Ebron
has got some issues.
He is a mental midget for sure.
With this, with the city of Detroit, man. Like, and the thing is, I know people hated him here, but I don't think he did himself any favors.
Oh no, not at all. Like, he was a guy, and you know what? Working through some of this, I don't even think Eric Ebron is that bad of a player. I think Eric Ebron had the unfortunate luxury of stepping into the shoes that were left by Brandon Pettigrew. And when we watched the practice squad, the presents the throwback, when we watched that, Brandon Pettigrew had a ton of really, really bad games, and he had a lot of really bad moments. And I think Eric Ebron stepped into those shoes, and I think there were some characteristics that Eric Ebron demonstrated that were very similar to Brandon Pettigrew.
I 100% agree that he was put in a bad spot because of that, because people had no patience. People were frustrated with Eric Ebron in year one. And in fact, I think his year one numbers for a tight end were actually pretty impressive. In fact, his career as a Lion, they didn't live up to top 10 pick status, but he was a good tight end here, and he never got that credit. Again, coming up in 15 minutes, the Tigers will, a game we're going to be playing. But first, Stroz, what do you got going on this weekend that you're trying to avoid?
So you're going to tell me I'm a bad person, and that's okay. And I'm fine with it. I embrace it. It's what it'll be.
I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you do shitty things.
That's probably the most accurate statement I've ever heard. Here's the deal. I've got a graduation party coming up this weekend, and I'm on the fence on whether or not I want to go. Well, the truth is I don't necessarily want to go. My mom's going. It's for my cousin. I was thinking about just giving her a card with some money, and I don't necessarily have to go. But it's for my cousin. Basically lives right down the street from me. And I just kind of want my Sunday to be my Sunday. I don't want to have to go and spend any time with anybody. I don't want to have to do the whole family thing. I don't want to, I don't want to be bothered is really what it comes down to. And I know that sounds shitty, and I don't mean for it to sound that bad, but I just kind of want my own day. I want just a day to kind of relax. If I want to lay around my underwear, I'm going to lay around in my underwear. If I want to go to the beach, I'm going to go to the beach. If I want to do whatever it is that I want to do, I just want to be able to do that.
See, like, if we did this episode 3 or 4 years ago, I might say, dude, you're an asshole. But I feel like I've changed a lot in the last few years and understand, like, how important, like, it is to have your time. And like I asked you before we started recording this, when we were planning this, you said you're not close with the cousin. So like, it doesn't, to me, I'm honestly not going to kill you for it. The only problem that I have is you told me she lives less than a half mile away. And so a grad party is something that I just feel like the quick drive through is like a totally viable play. You know what I mean? Like, the stop by for 10 minutes doesn't look bad at a grad party. Like, there are some events you can't do that for. Like, you're not stopping by for 10 minutes to a wedding reception. But you can do that for a grad party. And
here's the problem, though.
I think it's normal.
Here's the thing. That's not how I am. Generally, I go to these things, and I have like, when it's a family event, I have a hard time just kind of dipping in and then dipping out. I find it really, really hard for myself to kind of pry myself away. Like, I'll swing by my dad's house, and I mean to only be there for like 10, 15 minutes. Next thing you know, I'm stuck there for 2 hours.
So let me ask this. Is it because you're having fun, or is it because you feel bad leaving?
It's usually because I feel bad leaving.
Because if it's because you're having fun, then I don't think that, if it's that, like, you're going to have a hard time leaving because you're going to feel bad, I can get that. If you're like, man, I don't want to go and end up accidentally having fun, like, that would be dumb.
Oh yeah, that'd be absolutely stupid. No, like, I'll probably have a good time. Like, I'm going to enjoy the people that are there. I just don't know if I want to take the time out. It's going to sound really bad. I don't know if I want to take the time out of my weekend to go do that. And again, it'll only be, like you said, in your case, 10, 15 minutes. My case, probably an hour. I just don't know if I want to do that.
Can you set up an excuse?
Like, have something like preordained? Like, oh, hey, I've got this going on. I can only stay for a few. I mean, I probably could.
Interesting choice of preordained. Is that the correct usage of that?
I think so. Can we look that up? I invent words.
Well, you didn't invent it. It's definitely a word, but I don't think I've ever heard it used in that situation. And now I'm really curious.
No,
No, it's perfect. It felt weird to me, but it was perfect usage. I just had to check you on it. But yeah. Like, just have a plan, whether it's real or fake, and say, like, that's what you're up to.
Is that like one of those things, like, where you go on a date and you have, like, your emergency phone call from your friend, like, hey, call me?
Have you ever done that?
Like, no, never.
I feel like that's more of a women's thing, right?
I think so. I've never done it.
Should we go off on a total tangent that is nothing to do with the topic?
I love tangents. Let's go.
I feel like every first date I've ever gone on, like 30 to 40 minutes in, the woman goes to the bathroom. That's for that reason, right?
I would assume so, yeah. Almost positive, yes.
I just had to bring it up because I literally don't know if I've been on a first date where that didn't happen. And every single time I'm like, this is the check-in.
Oh, yeah, it has to be. But here's the thing. Do they end up leaving you, or do they stay on that first date?
In fact, honestly, I don't know that I've been on a first date that didn't go at least like 90 minutes.
Oh, see, so you're doing things well.
Yeah, I mean, well enough, I guess.
Yeah, you're doing okay.
It was just a thought because you brought up the idea of that check-in call, and I feel like every single time that's my thought is like, this is the check-in call, good or bad, just like making sure they're alive and that you're not a serial killer.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Is that a normal thing for you too?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. It definitely happens, and I've never had that set up, and I don't think I ever plan to have that set up.
No, I think it's more common for women.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this much. I've been on a couple dates where I could have totally used that. like this is just not going well. I need to exit stage left, like now. So like I could have used it for sure. But usually when that happens, I just find myself getting drunk enough or staring at the TV to where I just kind of block them out anyways. Cause look, I'm going to pay for this dinner. It's going to be a good time. I'm going to enjoy myself as much as I possibly can. So it means I got to get effed up and watch TV.
Like, I give you the pass on that. The staring at the TV is pretty, you're basically saying, look, you can leave.
Yeah. Like, have you never ever done that? Have you ever been put in an awkward situation where you don't care who's at the table, you don't want to talk to any of these people, you don't want to be involved with them, but the TV's on, and you just find yourself just engrossed? Like, it is the most fascinating thing on television. It could be a documentary on alley cats, but you are just staring at it.
On 2 dates that I would term as like definitively bad. And maybe in the future we can get into these. We don't have time to get too deep into it right now. One of them, all she did was quiz me. Like, she would, she'd ask me a question, or how about this? Like, she'd ask me a question, I'd answer, and then unless I responded with a question, she would respond with another question. She couldn't, like, naturally bounce off on conversation. Very uncomfortable. I don't know why we got a second drink. It was the wrong call, but we did. And then the other one, it was just like a massive, let me put it this way. There wasn't a massive age gap, but there was a very massive maturity gap. She was 21. I think I was only 24 or 25. But she had no driver's license. She had no job and had never had one. She was in college, so she wasn't living at home. But it was just very like, we live in different planets, and very uncomfortable for that reason. Now, she was very cute, so like, I tried to make it work, but like, it just wasn't.
Isn't it great being a guy? Because depending on how hot she is, you'll totally suck it up. You're like, this is horrible. It's going bad.
So but you know what? I still tried to get a second date. It's the only time I've tried and didn't get a second date.
I love it. That it's such a guy thing too. Like, hey, this is going down like the Titanic in a panic, but you're hot enough to where I'll give you that door.
I'll see where
you can lay on the door, Rose, and I will freeze in the Atlantic Ocean. It's okay.
All right. Well, this has nothing to do with what you're trying to get out of this weekend, but we had to go there for a couple minutes.
Guys, let me know if I'm a piece of trash at Adam R. STROZ. Also, let Brendan know if I'm a piece of trash at Brendan_Riley.
Brendan Riley _.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
No worries. All right.
You know I'm horrible at that.
The Tigers will. We each got a couple of these. I could see this going a little fast here, but we're going to talk through them. My first one, the Tigers will start Casey Mize at least 5 games. We talked about maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago how much we could see some of those names. And I think the last month or two, we've gotten a better sense. It sure seems like Casey Mize, he's not on the official 30-man roster, but he is on the taxi squad, so he's available. It seems like Ron Gardenhire wants the opportunity to see him. There's obviously the games of, arbitration control based on how early he comes up, how early he's on the roster. 5 games might be shooting low. It just felt safe. With 60 games, each starter should start about 12. I'm betting that even if they don't bring him up as soon as they're able to, without hurting the arbitration year, I think that you will see him come up due to injury, due to COVID, due to whatever. At some point this season, he's going to come up and he's going to get a few stars.
See, I like that. Casey Mize is going to play this year for the Detroit Tigers. And Casey Mize is going to play so good. Casey Mize will be the best pitcher for the Detroit Tigers this season. So that right there could be more of an indictment on what this pitching staff looks like, or Casey Mize is the real deal. I'm not 100% sure which direction I want to go in right now. I'm going to lean more towards the fact that it's an indictment on this pitching staff. But I like your 5 games, but I'm going to expand that and extrapolate that to being the best pitcher this season.
So Matthew Boyd's the opening day starter for the Tigers.
Yes.
And And I think that you can essentially say that means he's the most safe to be a top pitcher. Maybe he's not the ace. They don't really have a true ace, but he's like he's clearly your 1 or 2, or you're somewhere in that ballpark. So basically you're saying, will Casey Mize be better than Matthew Boyd? Let me ask you this. If Casey Mize is better than Matthew Boyd through a full 60-game season, how do you feel?
As a Detroit Tiger fan, I'm ecstatic. I'm excited because the future looks bright.
I think that's a pretty good rookie year for someone that young. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say ecstatic, but I feel pretty good. That's a good rookie year.
I mean, look, Matthew Boyd last season, I'm trying to pull up his stats right now for what he did last year. Matthew Boyd last year was pretty solid. He was probably the best pitcher the Tigers had, and I think it's a good pick for him to be your opening day starter this year. Last year, Matthew Boyd pitched in 32 games. What was his win-loss record? It doesn't matter. Win-loss is kind of a horrible. So he's 9-12 last year, but his ERA was 4.56, and he had 238 strikeouts. You mean to tell me if Casey Mize comes in and wins you, we'll say 4 games, loses you, 8, and gives you an ERA somewhere near 3.5, you're not going to be pumped up about that? Look, it's his first year. I think you'll be really excited.
It's exciting. I don't think it's a positive is what I would say. I'm not celebrating that start by Casey Mize, but I'm feeling pretty good. My second one, the Tigers will keep our interest through the midway point of the season. Look, I actually think we should have mentioned this. Just within the last couple hours, the MLB has approved expanded playoffs. They're going to 16 teams, which means you don't gotta be all that good to get there. And I think the Tigers will be good enough to keep themselves in the race for at least half the season. I wouldn't rule out them making it, especially now, but between Casey Mize and I think we may get to see some other young players, I think a month and a half from now, you're going to be watching Tigers baseball games. And let's be clear here. We had this conversation maybe a month or two ago. I think we both were expecting 2021 at the earliest, but because of the way this season worked out, 60-game season, I think they're going to keep us interested for at least a month.
Yeah, definitely. It's no longer a marathon. This is really and truly a sprint. And if you get off to a hot start, or if you just find a way to string a couple games together, next thing you know, you're in playoff contention. And I could totally buy this team keeping your interest through the midway point of the season. Now, this player is already on the disabled list. And because of that, the Detroit Tigers will release Jordan Zimmermann before the season is over. I think after his stint on the 45-day DL, I think they just say, see ya, thank you, we appreciate everything you did, sayonara, sucker, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I just think this team is ready to move on. This pitching staff, I don't think looks great right now. I think as the season moves forward, you're going to start to bring some of these younger guys up. You're going to put them in spots. You're going to try them out. I think when he gets healthy enough to pitch, I think this pitching rotation is going to look a lot different. And I just don't think there's going to be any room for him, and there's no reason to keep him on the roster.
I'm not going to lie to you. Jordan Zimmermann is entirely out of my consciousness. He is meaningless to me. I view Jordan Zimmermann as a relic of the past, which isn't even fair because he was never on the good Tigers. He was supposed to be a guy who was there for the end of the good Tigers, but he was useless for those teams. So yeah, probably. And if not, I don't really care. My final one, the Tigers will not buy or sell at any point in this season. And the reason I bring that up is because if they're relevant at the deadline, which is a couple weeks into the season, I think you could make a case that they would want to buy, give us a chance to watch some exciting baseball. Not that it's the right decision, that they would want to. But I think that they're going to play it smart in terms of not buying. They're not going to move any young prospects to win a 60-game season. But I also don't think that they're going to throw away the opportunity to play competitive baseball.
I like that. I don't think they're going to.
What was your initial reaction?
Well, when you said that, I was kind of shocked because I see this team being a seller, not necessarily a buyer. And I think a lot can kind of hinge on this next guy, because I think they might be able to. If there's a contender out there, I think CJ Cron will be able to get you something back in return. I don't necessarily know what that'll be, because we'll have to wait to see what the season looks like. But I think CJ Cron is going to lead the Tigers in hits and batting average this year, which kind of tells you where Miguel Cabrera is going to be at. Miguel Cabrera is a guy who all throughout spring training so far hasn't had an extra base hit. I think the majority of your power is going to come from your new first baseman in CJ Cron. And I think when the trade deadline comes around, he might be a guy who could fetch you something in return. So it shocks me, but at the same point, I totally get what you're saying because they're not willing to risk anything. This is kind of I don't want to say it's a throwaway season, but for an organization like the Detroit Tigers where there's not a whole lot of expectation, there's not a whole lot that is going to help you right now. This is definitely a future play. I don't know if you get anything out of either trading a guy this year or if you want to bring somebody in and give something up for him. So I can see them holding steady.
I'm not going to lie. I don't know a lot about CJ Cron. I'm looking at his numbers. His power numbers are notable. So maybe somebody would have interest. The only thing I would say is that if they are competitive, I just don't think they're going to want to throw away an opportunity to capture your attention because they know they haven't had it. And I think that while they're not going to be stupid and throw something away for the future, I think that they will capitalize on the opportunity to have your attention.
I like it. I mean, like again, I could see them holding on to pieces, but I could also see them getting rid of specifically CJ Cron if his numbers stand out, just to possibly get something to add.
Your third one?
Yeah, that was my third.
Okay, that you think he's going to be the best?
I think he's going to be the best hitter on this team.
Over Miguel Cabrera.
Over Miguel Cabrera.
Over Miguel Cabrera, who's in the best shape of his life.
So they say. So like every year, man, this is what happens with Miguel Cabrera. Every year he comes into his training camp in the best shape of his life. Of what, Miguel Cabrera? Like
being in the best of his life?
It's like the fourth or fifth year of this. He comes into training camp, he's slimmed down, loses like 20 pounds, right?
How good a shape is he in right now? That's the best shape of his life for the fourth year in a row.
You would think this guy could go and win some type of a bodybuilding competition or something. But I mean, look, he does look like he's slimmed down quite a bit. But this happens every year. He comes in, he's down about 25 lbs, and then basically 6 weeks roll around, and he's hanging out at the buffet in the locker room, and next thing you know, he's up 30 pounds. So like everything he lost, he just put it all back on plus 5, and then next thing you know, his knee or his back goes. And I think at this point he's eclipsed 30, and for power hitters, unless you're on that good, your numbers start to wane a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I feel like I made you uncomfortable with that.
No. I'm hesitant to ever predict Miguel Cabrera bounce back, but I'm also hesitant to predict CJ Cron, who's never batted above 260. No, he had a year at 278. But for the most part, he's a career 250 hitter with some power. I'm hesitant to predict that guy to be better than Miguel Cabrera. And I think that's understandable. But the power numbers are interesting, and we'll see what happens. That's going to do it. I'm excited to actually get to watch some sports. The next time you hear us, there will have been Tigers games. We'll probably talk a little bit about them, depending on how things start. Who knows, Stroz? Maybe we're talking about an undefeated Tigers team, almost 10% of the way through the season.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?